Right. Welcome to this episode of Vestibular Talks. Today we have Rudy with us. He's the creator of Brain Cancer Diaries, correct?
Yes, a little bit, probably the most extreme of the vestibular disorders, where my tumor is affects me and my vestibular region pretty effectively. And actually, learning more about vestibular conditions is what saved my life. There's a guy named Jim Hanasek who has Menieres disease, who I work with. I credit him with saving my life because I just realized some of the issues I have were a lot more serious than what I initially thought they were. So anyway,
All right. Rudy, first of all, I want to thank you because you are kind of a mentor to me. I started doing these video chats and the vestibular talks because inspiration from you. So thank you for that. And
no, it's an honor for me to be here. And I'm glad that, that was kind of my goal. I don't think any of us are going to get 7 bazillion followers and make tons of money from doing it. It's all about spreading awareness so people understand, especially when it comes to vestibular stuff. There's so little that's known. Even in the world of science and people who are working on it, they don't know very much about it. Especially your story. Where you don't even really know what it is
exactly.
What it is. It just shows you. And hopefully, if people are having kind of similar issues, they're more diligent, like yourself, in getting treatment, finding things that help them out, and so forth and so on. And getting to the bottom of it.
Of course. All right, Rudy. So what is your official diagnosis?
My official diagnosis is I have depending on who you talk to, either a grade 2 or grade 3 diffuse in my brain. It's cancer for people unfamiliar with it. It is in my vestibular region, so it impacts me much the same way as, say, Meniere's or acoustic neuroma or some other mystery diseases like you seem to have, or pinched nerves or whatever. Fortunately for me, it is not terminal. At least, hopefully, it isn't. So far, so good. They are able to do what's called a resection, where they're able to remove most of the tumor that's there. They couldn't touch the stuff in my brainstem. Unfortunately, that's, as you know, where a lot of the vestibular stuff happens. So, and in my cerebellum as well. So it's left me with some things. In some ways, I'm actually worse than I was before I was diagnosed. But the good news is I probably won't die. So.
Okay, yeah, that's great news. Rudy, when did this start? How long ago this started happening?
Well, that's an interesting question because, the type of cancer I have is actually a pediatric cancer. So it's possible that I've had it my whole life and it's just gradually gotten worse.
Okay.
Where I first noticed it, where it became kind of a hindrance to daily life, was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I used to be a real estate agent a long time ago in a former life. And I go into a lot of older homes. And older homes, sometimes they have slanted floors and stuff. I'd walk on them and I would just feel really dizzy for a while. I'd have to sit down in a quiet room and just sort of collect myself, and it would go away. And then I'd go to an amusement park, and everybody gets sick on roller coasters, but a little bit, that's part of the fun. But my symptoms would last a little bit longer than most people. Usually it's gone after 5-10 minutes after you're off the ride. For me, it would be like a half an hour or an hour. I would feel really, really bad still. So, but yeah, so about 5 years, it got gradually worse over the years, especially over the last 5 years. I started having problems with sort of extreme fatigue, imbalance issues. There's a couple times where I was riding my bike where I just fell over mysteriously. And just sort of just not feeling right, and then I'd say I probably got really serious in the last year or two. And that's finally when I started trying to crack down on what was causing this. And that led to a whole slew of diagnosis and things, very much similar to the journey you're on right now. So.
All right. Rudy, from talking to you before, we had a conversation where you told me you were misdiagnosed. They actually told you that you had Menieres disease for a while, and that's why you believe you had, correct?
Yeah, there's many things. Menieres disease was one of the ones that was considered more seriously, just because it matched up with a lot of my symptoms, but also vestibular migraines. It's another one that was taken very seriously. I was on medication for that for a little bit. They thought it might be a pinched nerve, and so I was in physical therapy for that. And all those things helped a little bit, but it didn't get rid of it completely. But yeah, Menieres is definitely was one of the more, I would say, one of the more serious candidates for a while. But then they kind of ruled it out. They did the, blowing the air in your ear and all that stuff, and all those fun little tests and stuff. And then they kind of ruled that out. It was finally until I went to a neurologist, I got a second opinion. Much like yourself, I was very diligent in trying to get a proper diagnosis because things just didn't make any sense and nobody was giving me the help I was looking for. And so I just went ahead and went to a different doctor completely, paid for some stuff out of pocket to kind of just get it taken care of. And that neurologist was just said, well, let's just rule out the very unlikely. Let's give you an MRI. Let's start with that. And unfortunately, I had the unlikely, which was a brain tumor and cancer. So you've had an MRI and ruled that out, fortunately, which is good because that's a whole other journey that I wouldn't wish upon anybody. I mean, as bad as dealing with vestibular issues are, and unfortunately, you tend to get worse over life the longer you have them. This last year's been pretty miserable, but it's getting better. It's getting better.
Good. That's good to hear. Rudy, prior to the MRI, what kind of testing or what kind of other diagnosis they did in order to find out what it was?
Well, like I said before, they did the ear test where they were testing for Menieres. I was on this platform where they were gauging my balance. I was hooked up to a bunch of computers. All kinds of electrodes, a lot of hearing tests. There was some blood testing that they did to kind of figure some things out. A lot of it was audio visual testing is what they were really focusing on. I know that benign positional vertigo, or I forget what the full name of it is which also causes BPPV. They tested a lot of things related to that because they kind of assumed that maybe that was another strong candidate, but they did all the sort of treatments they did for that, and all of it made my symptoms worse. So so that was fun. That was it. I did see a physical therapist because I thought I was maybe a pinched nerve, and they did notice that there were some things off in my neck. So I mean, there's probably a combination of things going on, but the big one is cancer. So
yes, of course, that's very serious. And Rudy, once they found out that it was cancer, what kind of treatment did they start? Any medicines or any?
I had 2 surgeries. One was a biopsy. Kind of benign, malignant. If it was malignant, what kind of cancer type was it? Just get a better sense of, because I mean they do CT scans, but they don't tell you so much. MRIs only tell you so much. Fortunately, my tumor is located in a place that's easily accessible without too much. I mean, you see people with huge, giant scars on their heads. I have a very small one behind my ears. You probably can't see it. But I can send you a picture of what it looked like after. It's a very small area. So it's, unfortunately, that's the good part. The bad part is it was attached to my brainstem and a part of the cerebellum where you can't really touch in surgery. So even though it's accessible, there's not much they could do about it. So that was the first step. And then I went through radiation and chemo last fall of 2018 for about 6 weeks. I had 30 sessions of radiation, and I was doing I was on chemotherapy for a month, and then they did MRIs after that, and they found that didn't really do much for me. So for whatever reason, my tumor actually grew. What was left of my tumor actually grew during that time. I've since then switched doctors. I'm now going to see a specialist, which is something I definitely recommend to people. Regardless of what ails you, try to find somebody who specializes in whatever your issues are, because it makes a big difference. I since then switched to another doctor. I go to Duke University, even though it's a 5-hour drive. It's well worth it for me because it's a brain center and they specialize in that stuff. they've actually been able to, they then put me on daily chemotherapy, some different drugs. And then also another drug called Avastin, which is not technically chemotherapy, but it's only used as a chemotherapy type drug. And then my tumor actually has shrunk under.
Oh, okay. That's good news.
And more importantly, it's also brought down the swelling in my brain a lot and opened up my fourth ventricle, which is important because that leads into the, not to bore people too much, but that leads into the brain stem and has a lot to do with vestibular issues. And I've definitely noticed that as that's opened up. And I'll send you a picture of what that looks like, just to make it a little easier, but to tell. But it's helped me become more physically active, which is really important for people with vestibular issues. Is just being as active as you can. So, and obviously diet helps too, and all that. So.
All right.
That's the main treatment, and that, and also physical therapy has been a huge help, just because giving me a lot of exercises, whether it's using a foam roller or doing eye exercises or things like that, have helped a lot. I mean, it's slow, but it's happening, definitely trending in the right direction.
All right. No, that's great news. Rudy, you're very active in social media, whether it is with your YouTube channel or with Instagram. You're very active on creating awareness about these conditions. Have you found that people are very receptive and thankful from what you're doing in social media?
Absolutely. I'm also very active on Twitter as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, number one, it's a support group of a type for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really like to go to support groups, the traditional, like meet with like 10 other people who are going the same thing and whatever, just because I don't know why. I'm just more of an introvert, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I've made a lot of friends sort of in the internet who have kind of been through what I'm doing, or just been through what I'm going through, or just starting to go through what I'm going through, that have helped me understand my own diagnosis, maybe given me some ideas of things I should research or try or consider or not consider.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been great. And plus also just, I mean, literally, my main thing, my video log, the Brain Cancer Diaries video log. I mean, I've interviewed people from around the world. I'm in the process of talking to more people from around the world, not just people in the United States and Canada like yourself, but also from the UK, Australia, coming soon to the video log, and some countries in Europe. So definitely I feel like it is making a difference. People have messaged me just saying, thank you for doing this video. It really touched me. It made me feel not so alone, because as you know, I mean, these sorts of illnesses, regardless of what they are, can make you feel a little bit alone, because people don't really understand what it's like to live daily with, even though you have good days and bad days, people don't understand what it's like to have an attack where the whole room is spinning. It's
no fun.
What I like to do is like, okay, spin around 10 times and then try to walk a straight line. Now imagine doing that all day long.
Every day. Yes. It's
Rudy. I mean, you could do it, but it's hard. So
yes. What does the future hold for you now? What are your future plans? What are you focusing on?
For me, there's two big focuses. Is spreading more awareness. I'd like to get a little bit more popularity with the Brain Cancer Diaries log. Perhaps I should have chosen a better name, since it doesn't really focus primarily on brain cancer, but just people who have similar issues to mine. So there's that. Also a big thing for me. Like I used to run triathlons and swim and bike triathlons. I want to get back to that, even though I know I'll be a little bit slower. I want to do that. So I've been slowly getting more physically active. I mean, 6 months ago, I was only able to walk like 200 or 300 steps a day before just being exhausted, and now I'm averaging over 10,000. So getting to the point where I'm doing calisthenics again and all that. So that's kind of a longer term goal, but just as important in every way, just because more and more, that's what medicine, the health world is teaching us, is that the number one factor in getting over these sorts of illnesses is physical health, is being active, exercise, putting the right things in your body and things like that. But physical activity is a huge factor in how you deal with not just your mood, but then also how you can, if you do have something growing in your body, fighting that more effectively, and just overcoming, training your brain to look past the struggle of today and retraining it to be ready for the battle of tomorrow, so to speak.
Okay, Rudy, before we go, what's the one piece of advice that you would like to give to someone that is starting this process, someone that is just figuring it out, that they have a vestibular issue or even any chronic illness? What would be your advice to that person?
I think it's really important to keep track of the big picture. Just because when you're dealing with any chronic illnesses, there's good days and bad days, there's ups and downs. It's like a roller coaster. And I think it's more important to see the big picture, whether it's wanting to be there for your kids when they graduate high school, or it's like just being able to do certain physical activity or go to work without having dizzy attack spells or whatever, or just noticing that, like, hey, 6 months ago, I felt really awful when I was in this situation, and today it's not so bad. It's manageable, It's like, I think it's the big thing. It's just keeping the big thing, the big picture in mind, with also to the little things in perspective that you may not necessarily think. I think for me, like journaling, or at least making mental notes of where I was at certain points in time, has been huge, just because it's like, I'll get down on myself, but then I'll remind myself that, like, hey, a year ago, I couldn't wipe my own butt. So not to get too graphic, but I mean, that's really pretty amazing. I've kind of come a long way. I mean, like I said, 6 months ago, it was hard for me to walk 300 steps in a day, and now I'm doing 10,000. Even though I might feel bad after I do 10,000, I'm doing it. So, and I'm not having like the crazy dizzy spells after I finish or whatever. I might have to sit down for a couple hours and take it easy, but I'm getting through it, and it's not near as bad as it was before. So I think that's the main thing in learning how to manage your whatever your condition is.
All right. No, thanks, Rudy. And would you like to invite everybody to follow your social media pages and check out your video blog as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the easiest way to find is just go to braincancerdiaries.com. It'll take you to the website of the company that has been putting out my video. You can see them there. You can find me on YouTube as Brain Cancer Diaries, on Twitter as Brain Cancer Diaries, and Instagram as Brain Cancer Diaries. Also Facebook, there's a page. Actually, I think on Twitter it's actually BC_diaries.
Okay.
And then also that's probably in terms of vestibular conditions, and I've interviewed a few people with vestibular conditions. It's not just about brain cancer, so it's just it's about me exploring my journey with brain cancer, and part of my big issue, one of my big issues, are vestibular issues, because of where my tumor is located. So I try to understand what's going on. So.
All right. No, thanks, Rudy. Really appreciate it. Thank you for this opportunity to chat with you, and we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you. Keep spreading the good word.
All right. Take care.
Take it easy.